Welcome back to the Creatively Conscious podcast, where we interview industry professional graphic designers and educate beginners through conversation and experiences. You can listen to this on all podcast platforms and watch the interaction, action, and emotion unfold on YouTube. Thanks for everybody that is joining me today. In today's episode, I am going to be answering some Q&A questions that I've taken from my Instagram audience. I touch upon some really interesting topics that a lot of graphic designers encounter throughout their experience of learning, and share a little bit about why I first got passionate about design. So stick around and let me know if you like this format of the Q&A. It's going to be a slightly shorter episode, but I hope you enjoy. If you're new to this podcast and like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And without any hesitation, let's get into this episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Creatively Conscious podcast. I'm alone today, I haven't got a guest, but it's not going to stop me from delivering huge value about graphic design to you guys. And I took to Instagram and I asked a few members of my audience to give me some questions that they wanted to know about. I'm going to be doing a Q&A style episode today. It's going to be half the time of the normal episode, and I want to get you guys feedback on whether you like that time scale or whether you like the dynamic of me doing like a Q&A. So that's something that I need from you guys in the comments of the YouTube video, and also just send me a DM on Instagram if you liked what you saw in this episode. So it's going to be a variety of different questions, some personal experience ones, some tips, and advice around graphic design. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first question comes from HP_graphics, and his question is, I would like to know, at what age did you find your passion, and what skills you've learned until now to improve your services? And then he goes on to ask a second part, which I'm going to do as well, and that is, what are the most important ones, and what do you highly suggest creative freelancers to have in terms of skills, I guess? So I first found my passion for design when I was 16, I think, and I haven't really told this story. I told a bit about my backstory in the episode 0, the pilot of this podcast. So if you want to know a little bit more about my background, you can go and watch that. And yeah, I think 16 was probably the time that I found that there was a possibility for me to take graphic design down as a career path. And I found like people were going to pay money to actually get nicely visual stuff made, and it was quite a commercial thing as well. So that kind of opened up to me. But the way I knew it was my passion was because I started doing football illustrations. So I'd illustrate football players, and on Twitter I'd go over there and kind of like send it to them with a chance to get retweeted. And that was kind of, at 16, I thought that was the best idea to get my name out there. It didn't really do much, but I enjoyed the process of it, and I knew I loved what I was doing because I would spend 30 to 40 hours on these illustrations when my mates were either playing Xbox or going out to play football, or doing something else with their time, and I spend my weekends doing these illustrations. And I was like, wow, that being self-aware at that age to actually see this is something that I really enjoy doing, and it gives me so much pleasure and fulfillment to create these illustrations to then show people. I think that's what kind of has led me down this road now, and being able to create something that I can show to people is something that I just want to continue forever. Now, a bit about what skills I've learned to improve my service. One thing I'd say that really helped me to improve my skill set was getting a good knowledge of the design software that you're using, but not just completing the hell out of it and knowing exactly what every single bit of functionality does or what effects it can create, but actually knowing which software to use for which parts of the design process is really important as well. And it's really imperative that you understand, when you should be using, if you're using the Adobe Suite, when you should be using Photoshop or when you should be using Illustrator, because you'll get into the creative world and the professional creative world, you won't be doing it correctly. I am really happy with my knowledge of the software to, if a project comes to me and I'm like, oh, they want this or they want this in this particular style or whatever it might be, that I have a confidence that I know the software well enough, that the software that I use well enough to be able to create for any project that might come my way. And that's something that is really important, especially if you're going to get a job in the design industry, knowing how to create, not just having a great idea, but actually how to bring it to life is really cool and really important. That something that people will be looking out for if they're going to be hiring. Another thing that I would give as a tip that has helped me to improve my services is to take on daily challenges. Now, this might be for a year, it might be for 6 months, it might be for a week. But taking on a daily challenge is super, super helpful, because by pushing yourself to create every single day, you'll find out what your limits are, when you get creative block, how you push through that. You'll learn a lot about yourself as a designer and understand how effective you are at designing, which is really helpful. So yeah, I would say that's probably something that's really helped me in my career, creating quite a lot. And the amount that I put out on Instagram, I've done in the past a design challenge for a whole year to create something and post it on Instagram for a year. These type of things are really helpful because you're pushing yourself, and you'll find pressure makes diamonds, and that's the whole point, isn't it? It's putting yourself in an awkward position that you haven't ever been in before, and that's the way you learn. So I think if you're thinking about doing it, just go for it. You don't have to post it on social media, you don't have to post it where people are going to see it, but try and get feedback on it as well. That's always helpful. So hopefully that will help you. Another thing that I'd say to creative freelancers, something that's really important to you guys, is get a grasp of your design before you take it commercial. So improve your skill set in the comfort of your own home, behind your bedroom door. Figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at. Take all those courses, take all those things that are going to really improve your skill level, because there's no need to prematurely get into the design industry and try and make money from it. Because I've had messages from people that say, I'm 15, but I know that I want to be a graphic designer and I know I want to make money from it. How do I get clients? And I turn around to them, I say, you are at the earliest point in your career. Don't try and pressurize yourself to get to the next step, because you should be reveling in that enjoyment of and passion, same as I was at 16, like I've just said, of just creating for the sake of creating, and creating because you love what you do. And if you're practicing and trying to do as much as you can using my other piece of advice, which is taking a daily challenge, you will increase your skill level. You've then, I guess, got to assess whether you take it professionally, whether you start becoming a freelancer and charging for your work. That's up to you, but I think do the majority of your learning behind closed doors or without stepping into the industry, because you want to be prepared for it, and you want to be offering the best output that you physically can. There's no reason to be jumping into it way too early. So that's that question. I hope I've summarized what I wanted to say nicely. Number 2 comes from Powell. I'm not sure how to say your last name, so I'm just not even going to attempt it. But this is basically around recording video, what tools I use and my processes. So the tips I'd give for video, I'm not the best at it, but I enjoy doing it, and it's something that I'm definitely going to experiment more in my career. But just start. Basically, just start with your phone. That's the way I did it back in the end of 2020. I was just recording with my phone because it was the only way I knew how to. And what recording with some low quality kind of equipment will do is help you to storytell, and it will help you get a narrative behind your videos, make them more interesting in the actual content. A lot of people think you need an amazing camera and you need an amazing microphone to create good quality content. But I think people always think about the equipment and the output side of things, where you should actually think about the way you're strategizing to create your video content. Hopefully that will help. Yeah, hopefully, Powell, you'll enjoy that bit of advice. Another thing I'd say is your confidence on camera will evolve and grow as you get better and better at it. don't be too shy to give something a go. If you really do want to do it, the worst thing you can do is not do it and regret it rather than doing it and messing up. It's better to do it and mess up rather than not do it and regret it. That's what I always say. And for my editing process, I just do everything on Adobe Premiere Pro. I was lucky enough to find a lead that goes into my camera and into my laptop, and then find a piece of software so that I can actually press record on my screen here, so that I don't have to record or go and press record on the back of the camera while I'm doing this podcast. Like, it's nice to have this kind of setup. So do some exploring into how you want to record and the environment that you have to record in, because that's kind of the fun part as well, figuring out what your backdrop looks like, or how to edit the footage to look the nicest. That's a fun part. Now we're going to get into a really nice juicy one that a lot of people struggle with. Now this comes from Tushar_designs, and he asks, how do you begin the conversation when a client asks you for your prices, and how do you complete the negotiations of freelance work? Now this all starts when a client comes to you. Initially, unless you're doing cold emails, cold calls, whatever it is, cold DMs, a client will often come to you with an idea. And the first thing I do is try and understand their idea to the fullest in my own head. Then I will offer some advice on how we can improve it, how we can add stuff to it to make it better. So immediately I'm saying, how can I upsell this work that's coming to me? Because 9 times out of 10, the client will respect your opinion and say, oh, that's a really good idea, let's do it. And if they don't, you haven't lost anything from it either. So try that out. That's just a little tip that I'll have. But then once you've got the deliverables of the project down, price it. Now this doesn't have to be anything too pressurized, okay? Everyone always worries about, how much should I be charging? Is the client going to accept that? Are they going to be annoyed by this amount that I'm putting in? And I think that everybody undervalues themselves. So my tip is add 20% on, because even if it's too much, you can knock it down. You can always go down with pricing. And then once you have a confirmed price, I'm not going to go too much into pricing because there's a huge amount of content about pricing around the internet, and there's so much gray area within it. So do whatever you find you're comfortable with and go from there, because if you find that the price you're charging is how much you're valuing yourself at, and your time is that amount of money, then go with that. Next, one of the big things that I am a huge proponent for is signed documents. If you're able to write the scope of the project on a document and get someone to sign it, saying that they're happy with it and they're happy with the price that you're selling it at, get someone to sign it, get yourself to sign it, because you can hold them accountable to that. And there'll be no ambiguity with what the deliverables for the project are, and they can't change the scope because you can refer back to it. So it doesn't have to be the most detailed, but if you want to make it a bit more detailed to help yourself in the future, when the client says, oh, you said you would do this, you can refer back to it and say, actually, no, I didn't. So yeah, some sort of written document that's been signed is always good. Then I think ask for 50% upfront. And this is another question that I was asked. Is it correct to want 50% upfront? And how do you go about doing this? It's not hard. Obviously, it might seem hard for you guys that are beginners, but if you operate in the way that you ask for a deposit upfront, people will respect that. You don't go on to an online shopping platform and say, you know what, I'm not gonna pay your delivery charge. No, that's the way they operate. That's what you've got to do. That's what you've got to deal with, and that's the way it will work. So don't be scared to ask 50% upfront. It will give you confidence in your process, because once you have that retainer, or once you have that deposit made, you can be as creative as you like without worrying whether this person will pay you in the end. And I think that's the best way you can kind of get the ball rolling with your creative side. I'm not the most business minded, but That's something that I will always recommend to freelancers. So I've kind of just hit two questions in one there, which is pretty good. So I hope that helps. So you basically, once you've got the details of the project, you've got a price for it, and you've got your deposit, go to work. That's it. That's all it is. And there might be some pushback and you've got to deal with that, but good luck. Now, the next question that I want to take was from the branding Hamza. And this is a question asking what's better, being a graphic designer that can do a little bit of everything, or being a specialized designer. Now, there's two ways to look at this, and you can either be a freelancer or you can be a designer that works for a company. And there's probably a lot more different options, but I'm going to take it with those two for now. And if you're going to work in a company, I think it's better to be a versatile designer. So if you can work on your skill set to make yourself well-rounded and have an understanding for a lot of different things, you will be more valuable to somebody that will employ you. However, if you want to be a freelancer, there's an argument to be made to be a specialized designer. If you're in logo design, if you do a particular output of design, if you're into flyers, that's just an example, but if you want to be known for one thing and you're going to be charging money as a freelancer, you can charge more by being specialized. That's the way the world works. But a little note on the side of that is don't specialize too early, because if you limit yourself in what you create, if you don't enjoy doing that anymore, you're going to turn around and be like, what else can I do? And then be like, oh wait, I haven't got any more skills than what I know. And it's really good to have a broad understanding of lots of different design principles, because it gives you a lot more open doors. That's what I'll say. So try, if you're going to be a freelancer and that's your plan for life, try and be a little bit more broad in the beginnings and get your understanding of graphic design to a high enough standard where you can then say, I like doing this over this, so that's the direction I'm going to go. There you go. Next question is from Dom. I'm not going to say his last name because I know I'm going to get that wrong too. And this is, how do you overcome the fear of not being creative enough? This is something that a lot of creatives tackle on a daily basis. That imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not good enough, or you've just had a really great project go well, and now you're scared because you don't know if you can do it again. The only way you can really overcome this is through experience. So going back to what I said earlier, a lot earlier in the episode, if you can take on that daily challenge and give yourself a lot more confidence for churning out graphic design in a quick fashion and not having a freeze when you come up against that creative block, because there's no way you can't have creative block. Creative block comes for everybody. It's the way that you strategize and plan to deal with that creative block that will turn you into a great designer. And yeah, it's just all about confidence at the end of the day. If you can create in an efficient, methodical way, I think you will be more creative and you will be more successful as a creative. So don't be scared of a new project, because it's a great opportunity to design something different and test yourself again. And I think you can change your perspective to see it as something fun rather than something like, oh, I don't know if I'm quite good enough for this. So I hope that answers that question. Next one is from Yoon Design, and Yoon is a really, really great creator. He's really cool. He does some really cool 3D stuff, and he's like a UX UI designer. And he didn't really have any graphic design questions or anything related to getting better at design, but he wanted to know about my lifestyle. He wanted to know how I handle being on social media and working for a company at the same time. I guess that kind of balance. And he also wanted to know how I've benefited from my online presence so far. And I wanted to start with that one because having an online presence is not as spectacular as people might think, okay? Because once you have that online presence, you have to uphold it. You have to keep going, and it almost becomes a chore. People think that they want to have a huge audience, but in reality, it's a lot of work to keep it going. But I will say that I have found a huge improvement in my skill set since I have been designing for my Instagram and putting out this podcast, because I've had to learn different skills, different ways to market, different ways to, I wouldn't have ever started video work, which is awesome, or created a podcast if I hadn't have started my social media. So it's given me lots of different lanes to go in, and I've developed a skill set for my social media or for my online presence, I guess, if that's the way you call it. And it's pushed me to create more often. I do work a job. I do work as a web designer 9 to 5 days a week. So I guess I am creating all the time still, but it's nice to create something that's for you and that you're passionate about creating. Because if you compare someone that is in my position that doesn't do the social media stuff, but he does work as a web designer, and you compare it to what I do, which is work as a web designer and create stuff on the side, I'll leave it up to you. Who do you think is going to be better in 5 years' time? I'll leave that to you, and you can figure it out for yourself. You figure out if you want to create more daily or not. Then again, I can also say that don't put pressure on yourself to be at a particular standard or to create a lot. Look after your mental health as well. If you feel like you can't do something, then don't try and pressure yourself to do it. Like, be kind to yourself, because life is long and you'll be able to learn a huge amount in your lifetime. So there's two ways to see it. Now, my lifestyle, I kind of wanted to break it down quite a lot, but essentially I just have an hour and a half in the morning where I get up and do everything that I want to do, get ready, eat some breakfast, whatever. And then I go to work for 9 hours, and then I come home and I've got my evening. And I go to bed at maybe 10. So from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. I'm sleeping. That gives me an hour and a half in the morning and 4 hours at night. And in that time, throughout the week, I create all my social media stuff. I create my podcast. At the moment, I'm creating 4 pieces of content for Instagram and a podcast every 2 weeks. I'm finding it pretty manageable, which is cool. But yeah, that's my lifestyle. I just find that if ever I have some downtime, I will put that into creating content because it's my passion. Like I said right back at the start of this episode, I was 16 just creating for fun, and I still have that playfulness of creating and showing the world what I have to offer in a creative sense, which is cool. So I hope that's a little insight into what I do and why I enjoy creating for Instagram. So the last question I have to wrap up this episode is, what was your perception of graphic design before, and how is it now? How has it evolved now that you've been doing it for a while? And that was from Oliver Whitehouse, someone that I had on 2 episodes ago, one of my best mates from uni. I met him at design school, I guess you could call it, and I had him on 2 episodes ago. So if you're the type of person that wants to know more about the design education, formal design education, then go and watch that episode. If you're thinking, do I go to design school? Do I not? Then that might help you. So to answer this question, I think my perception of graphic design when I started was that it was really cool, okay? And I could create whatever I wanted, and people would pay me depending on how good I was and what I created. But the way I look at it now is that graphic design is very commercial. It goes alongside marketing, advertising, and all those different things. So you have to almost be a businessman as a graphic designer if you want to be a freelancer, or even if you want to succeed in a higher job role at a design agency. you have to be business minded. You have to see where the money's coming in, how it's going out, how long things are taking, which can more often than not, take away your love for design. Obviously, I've only been working for under a year now, and I see people who are a decade into the industry and have been working for 10 years. They see it very, very differently now. They don't have that passion and love and drive to get better. So I think the one downside I would say to this industry, if you're unable to keep that passion and that strive to improve, it can get very dull and you will stagnate, which is sad. So that's why I kind of do the different things that I do, because I'm constantly still evolving and getting better, which is nice to think. And I will definitely urge anybody that is wanting to be a graphic designer is don't get to a point where you're comfortable. Keep pressuring, keep experimenting, and having that desire to improve, because that's really a good trait to have. Otherwise, you'll get to a point in your life where you don't have passion anymore, and that's really, really sad. So notice the things that you like to do, what you like to create, and experiment. It's really easy to find new things in your industry now, which is cool. So there we go, guys. That's the end of this episode. If you enjoyed this kind of format, which is like more of a Q&A, make sure to let me know in the comments of the YouTube video, or either send me a DM on Instagram if you're listening on podcast platforms. So one final note that I have for the viewers of this episode is not to worry too much, because life is long, and if graphic design is truly your passion, you should be patient, and you should be willing to be patient. Rushing to become the best at your craft will only result in you skipping major learning steps, and you'll fall out of love with what you're doing, and one day you'll turn around and be like, this isn't for me anymore. The people that have a career for 30 years have been learning every single day of their career. They haven't peaked a year in and flatlined. That's not fun for them anymore. So just take it a step at a time. Thanks to everybody that's made it this far in the show. I hope you enjoyed this new format and the idea of me answering your guys' questions. I hope that you can all take something informative and educational away from this episode. And if you have any more questions, leave them in the YouTube comment section or DM me on Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, if you want more educational design content, go and follow me over there at hedges.design. And finally, if you're listening on podcast platforms, please leave me a review. It will help other people discover this podcast, and we can educate more young beginner designers. Now have a wonderful rest of your day.